Hey kids, this is Ivan. How you doing? If you've ever wondered what a 7-day fast is like from the perspective of a normal person, this video is for you. Now, when I say normal, I mean that I'm not a fitness guru. I don't have a health channel. I'm not about to try to sell you a supplement or a program or a book. I'm just a normal guy that decided to give this a try. Before I go any further, this is the part where I say I'm not a doctor, I'm not a medical professional, I can't really give you any kind of medical advice, and so if you're thinking about doing something like this, you should talk to your doctor first. Okay, let's get back to the fun stuff. So why did I do this in the first place? Well, I've had problems maintaining my weight pretty much all my life, and I have phases in my life where I eat really good, I go to the gym, I exercise, I'm really healthy, and I have other phases where I don't exercise and I eat like crap. And this is one of those crap phases. So I'm eating a lot of junk food, especially at night. I'm eating way too much of it. I'm not exercising, and I actually went up to 232 pounds, which is pretty much my top weight. And at 5'10", that's a lot. And at that point, being overweight isn't just about the vanity. I feel bloated, I feel sluggish. Every time I eat, I feel bloated, as a matter of fact. I'm short of breath, I don't have as much mobility, and generally, I feel like crap. So I started hitting the gym again, doing the resistance training and, using the bike and all that kind of stuff. But the diet wasn't going so well. And I just so happened to be scrolling through YouTube shorts, and I saw this guy that did a 7-day fast. And I don't know for what reason, but something clicked. I said, you know what? I'll try that. I'll be honest, I had a lot of doubts if I could actually do that. I did a 3-day fast 3 decades ago, and that went okay, but it was difficult. And so I'm wondering, can I really do this? But it was something that I wanted to try. I figured I had a weird advantage. I generally don't eat during the day while I'm at work. I generally eat at night. So I figured, well, I've got practice with at least half of it, right? So at this point, I did the research to figure out what do I really need to do. I ignored all the hype and just looked at what was necessary in order to do a fast like this safely. And of course, the big deal is the electrolytes, the sodium, the potassium, and magnesium. And things like Gatorade and Powerade, well, they're not going to have enough. They've got some, but not enough. I did drink some of this, but I stuck to the diet kind because, of course, no sugar. But I also found some mixes that had more potassium and more sodium in them. Even those didn't have enough to do all of the electrolytes. So I actually went out and I bought some potassium. Let's see here. I bought some magnesium and salt. We got salt. So I had salt in the house because, oddly enough, you can just use salt for sodium because that's what it is, sodium chloride. I actually, went and took some multivitamins as well. And I tried some probiotics for a minute because I thought how could that be bad? But it turns out you're not really using them at all, and they can actually make you feel more bloated. So I cut that out after a few days. Outside of all that, I did have a few bottles of coconut water, and these are about 180 calories each. So I got a lot of potassium in them. And I had some bouillon, but I chose some kinds that had pretty much no calories, and they're pretty much for the sodium. I only had these once or twice. So all told, I probably took in, under 1,000 calories. It's actually probably under 700 calories. The only other thing I had, which was kind of funny, was I had some vitamin C chewable tablets, and a couple nights I found myself popping them one after the other like candy, and I stopped. I was like, oh my God, I'm just snacking again, which was pretty entertaining, but that didn't add very many calories at all. So that's pretty much what I did as far as the electrolytes and my caloric intake. But the electrolytes were a thing that I had to watch all the time because you can start to feel kind of weird. So I had to research, what does electrolyte imbalance feel like? When you have too much of one of those or too little, what does that feel like? And, how do you amend that? Do you stop taking this or do you take a little more? And sometimes it was just as simple as realizing I was feeling kind of weird and eating a little bit of salt, and boom, felt better. So I chose a Monday. It was actually November 10th, and I started the fast at exactly 12 a.m. I think I ate something at about 11:58 on the day before. So what was it actually like? It wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. I didn't feel anywhere as much hunger as I thought I was going to be experiencing. And a lot of it was a mindset. I went in there really deciding that I was going to do this thing, even though I had my doubts. I was going to try to see it all the way through. And I just had to do it one day at a time, just like everything else. So it wasn't that hard sticking to that day. I did some research to find out what to expect, and like they said, after a couple days, you really didn't feel that much hunger. What was kind of weird was the phantom hunger, or it was like cravings, and you realized it wasn't hunger at all. It was psychological. It was associations. Well, I eat now, or now would be a good time to, I've always snack right now, or it's the weekend. I don't have anything to do, so usually we just go grab lunch or something like that. And that was kind of prevalent in the beginning days and a lot in the last few days. But once again, it wasn't like real hunger. It was just these associated stimuli. What did show up were the times I felt like my electrolytes were off, where I started to feel a little weird and a little strange, and so I had to keep close tabs on that. It wasn't a constant, effort to do that or being constantly vigilant. It was just enough. I was like, oh, I'm a little off here, and have I taken this or not lately? What was remarkable is how active my digestive system remained throughout the entire thing, especially my colon, to get kind of gross, but you know what I mean? The first few days you're kind of getting rid of everything. And after that, it still keeps rumbling. And there's reasons for that. But, I experienced that throughout most of the fast, although part of that's my fault because I actually took too much magnesium. So I think I was flushing myself out more than I really intended to do. But, I guess I can't do any harm. It was just a bit of a pain in the ass. Speaking of sensations, there's another way that I felt different during the fast. And that is, I'm going to spare you most of science, although I am a science nerd. That's ketosis, because pretty quickly your body uses up all the glucose, all the glycogen in your liver, and then you start burning fats, turning these into ketones, and using the ketones as fuel. Your brain actually really likes ketones. They cross the blood-brain barrier. It uses those for fuel, and it makes you feel a little bit different. You feel pretty good. Some people call it the spiritual experience, but I noticed there was a little bit more clarity, a little more calm. You just felt a little bit different. The other thing that happened, which I didn't really feel as far as I know, but it's important to talk about, is autophagy, which I always want to call autophagy. But, it's your body eating itself, and it's not as nasty as it sounds. Pretty much when your cells run out of protein to use, they start looking at all this other stuff they have laying around inside them, all these organelles that are damaged and all this other junk that's there, the cells that are kind of damaged, and they start burning all of that stuff. And a lot of people say there's benefits. I'm not going to claim any kind of benefit at all, but that's what happens. So outside the stomach rumbling, I felt pretty good. I had a lot of energy. I had that calm, clear feeling from the ketones. I actually started going for walks again. I was walking like a half hour a day, which is something I've kept up afterwards, and that was very energizing. I hate saying it's energizing. I sound like somebody that's walking at the mall or something like that. But you know what I mean? It felt really good all the way around. The only other side effect I had was I did not sleep as well, and I have no idea why, but it didn't cause me to be tired in the morning. I still had a decent amount of energy the entire time. Speaking of exercising, I didn't do any resistance training at the gym because, when you're fasting, you don't have any protein coming in. The last thing you want to do is start making your muscles cannibalize themselves. And, really intense cardio is out anyway. So I started doing the walking, and I'm glad I did because it felt great. And like I said before, hunger really wasn't an issue. It was every once in a while, but most of it was psychological. But I'll tell you what, one of the things that kept me going was fantasizing about this big sashimi and sushi platter I was going to have, the next day after the fast was over. However, I did some more research, and my hopes, well, they were dashed. Actually, I was devastated, but I did the research, and I'm glad I did, because I found out there's a thing called refeeding syndrome, and it actually can be really dangerous. If you start eating normally right after a fast, especially a long fast, it can cause a lot of problems. Some of them are like GI upset, and bloating and nausea and all that good stuff, but in other cases, you can actually go into cardiac arrest, which is bad. What happens is when you start eating again, especially carbohydrates and proteins, your body releases insulin in response. And that's telling all the cells, hey, it's time to get moving here. We're going to rebuild everything. So your cells start pulling in electrolytes from the blood, things like phosphate and potassium and magnesium. And phosphate is the key one. If you remember your high school biology at all, the ATP or adenosine triphosphate is that energy source the cells use to do everything. When you're fasting, you're not taking in phosphorus. You're not eating protein, which is the main source of that. So your blood has some, but it's kind of low. You start eating again, your body produces insulin in response. That tells the cells to suck all the phosphate out of your blood, which they obediently do, and your phosphate levels crash. And then your next thing you know, your potassium levels crash and your magnesium levels crash. And this can cause arrhythmia or even cardiac arrest. So once I learned that, I was glad I did, so I didn't get into trouble, but I cried a little for that sushi and sashimi dinner. It was back to doing no hype research, and I found two different ways I could reintroduce food. There's either a 7-day plan, which really should be a 9-day plan, or there's a 14-day plan where you're testing food sensitivity very scientifically, and you're introducing one extra food every time. I don't think I'm going to do that. I'm sticking to the 7-day plan. So what did I get to eat? Day one was soft vegetables, so canned carrots and canned green beans and some zucchini and some spinach I boiled in broth, and they all tasted like the best food on earth because I tell you what, when you haven't eaten for 7 days, canned carrots are like a religious experience. Despite my misgivings about this limited diet, it turns out that I didn't feel unsatisfied. It was actually really nice to eat those foods. They all tasted great. And the only thing that happened was they only lasted my body about 24 hours. My body decided, well, we're not going to use these too much. Boom. And out they went. I forgot to mention that day one also included banana. And so I had probably too much of that because that gave me a little bit of bloating for a second, but that ended pretty fast. Day two, I got to eat sweet potato and avocado, and I put some blueberries in as well and some apple. And all that was great. It all tasted delicious and wonderful, no ill effects. Once again, none of this lasted me very long. Day three, I got to add hard-boiled eggs. Your first protein had to be something like that. And easy to digest, and they tasted delicious. They were hard to peel, but not a big deal. And so I didn't have any ill effects from those as well. And my guts were still kind of motile. Day four, which was yesterday, I got to have a white fish. So I had tilapia. It's great. I ate a pound of tilapia, actually. And I got to have a small salad because you're reintroducing, raw vegetables. And that was great as well. And I added some olives. And, my motility pretty much stopped at that point. So it wasn't so bad. Today, what did I get to add? Well, I got to add seeds and nuts. So I got some almonds and I got some sunflower seeds. And they were delicious. They were great. No ill effects. During all this time, I haven't felt hungry or dissatisfied. A lot of times, I just remember, oh, it's time to eat now. I fill up pretty quickly. I'm not feeling hungry afterwards. Am I eating afterwards? Yeah, sometimes I am. And it's more of that psychological hunger, which I still need to tackle. Day 6 and 7, this Saturday and Sunday, I get to start adding pretty much just about everything, almost everything back to my diet. So tomorrow I can have like chicken or salmon, and the next day beef, and adding a lot more raw vegetables and adding some simple grains like barley or rice. No wheat yet. And no dairy, which really makes me cry as well, because I love going to this Indian buffet, and it has things like paneer, which is cheese, and it has some cream in the sauces. So no Indian food this weekend, but I can have rice and I can have fish, so I think I'm going to go for that sashimi and sushi platter. One of the things that surprised me the most is how easy it was to stick to not only the fast, but the refeeding schedule. And I forgot to mention, I actually, during the fast, had to go pick up a bunch of pan pizzas and bring them to this recovery party, this anniversary for a meeting. And I had to sit there and watch people eat those and all kinds of delicious food. It was actually easier to watch them now when I wasn't eating anything than a couple of years ago when I was just eating celery and carrots off of the veggie platter. And, the fact that I could just only eat that was more upsetting than not being able to eat anything at all. But sticking to the refeeding schedule has been pretty easy. Yeah, I'm seeing some things in the refrigerator. Well, yeah, at night a couple times there were some things that were not on the list yet that I was really craving. So I just grabbed some blueberries and some sweet potato and pretended it was like that. But it really wasn't that hard. But enough about that, Ivan. How do you feel now? I actually feel really, really good. I'm keeping up with the walking. I lost 7 pounds, probably about 4 of which is actual fat. Maybe some of the rest of it is water. But, I'm still 225, so I'm still at a heavy weight for me. But I feel a lot better, and it's given me this kickstart. I am not a person that does really well with moderation. I'm not a person that does really well with gradual change. I usually need something radical. And so I decided to do this to give me a complete kickstart, start from square one. And so now at this point, I need to be really careful with the eating at night, cutting that out and eating the clean food and going back to the gym and starting to exercise again. But I call this a win. This has really been a great experience. Really kind of amazing because I did not think I was capable of doing it. And apparently I'm a member of a really small club right now. Not too many people have done this. So if you've ever thought about doing a 7-day fast, this is what it's really been like, at least for me, for a normal person, not a fitness guru, not somebody that's trying to sell you something or a program, not somebody that's jumping up and down on the soapbox of health and fitness. Just a normal person. So as long as you clear it with your medical professional, I recommend it. It was a really positive experience. And it was one of those things that wasn't just a positive health experience. It was kind of empowering to say, well, yeah, I think I can do this. I actually did it. I did something that was really hard that not a lot of people do. And it had benefits. I feel pretty good. If you have comments, if you have experience with this, I would love to hear them all. Like if you think I'm absolutely crazy, or if you've done this, or you're thinking about doing it, just leave me a comment below. And if you want to support the channel, you can always subscribe or like the video. And if you want to donate a couple bucks through Super Thanks, that would be great too. Thanks a lot for watching. I'll see you later.